John, you and I have spoken about 8 times today. I am not going to introduce you or ask how you've been because I know you've been great, but you look good. You ready to talk some football?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. There's been a lot going on, a lot of talk going on about the draft. We at Game of Pros, Jeremy, Dennis, and myself did like 3 separate long ones, just mock drafts, and then a couple other discussions. But there was a lot going on in the draft this year. One of the big points, big news going on, was the Niners. The Niners traded up from the 12 pick to the number 3 pick with the Dolphins. They gave up this year's first rounder, of course, and then also 2 future first rounders and a third rounder this year. So a lot of assets involved in that. They ended up taking Trey Lance, quarterback out of North Dakota State. I first wanted to get your opinions on Trey Lance and how you think he affects the Niners. And then after that, we'll talk a little bit about the other teams.
Great. Yeah. The Trey Lance pick really was, I think, the only pick that would have made any sense moving up from 12 to 3. You're obviously going to be taking a quarterback, and then the quarterbacks that you have to choose from, Trey Lance, I think, was the best of maybe 3. Justin Fields would have been a really good choice as well because of how talented he is and how highly he was graded to begin with. But I think that Trey Lance fits their scheme a little bit more. And a big part of that scheme is what they value in, I think, intelligence and character, which is not to say that either of the other guys didn't have it, but in addition to his Trey Lance's physical abilities, that's kind of what they were looking for. So I think it was a great pick. I think that what they gave up for it, though, was very risky, and it could hurt them in the coming years. But right now, they seem to be hell-bent on forgetting a really injury-plagued 2020 season and really getting back to form to what they were the year before that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the defense last couple of years has really taken them the whole way. It seemed like, among a couple other teams, they really were just a quarterback away, and Trey Lance could be that guy. I'm not going to say that I think that Trey Lance was the best option in the mock drafts that we had. I was leaning Justin Fields. Trey Lance was number 4 quarterback in my eyes. I just think that I always thought that Fields brought the best skill set, but from what I understand, after talking to Kyle Shanahan and to the front office in San Francisco, they just thought that Trey Lance was maybe not, you don't want to say the smartest guy to choose from, but definitely had the best head on his shoulders and fit their mindset the best. So maybe it's a personality thing. I think you and I had talked right before we started recording, and you were saying that was maybe something that they were going for. Was it just a personality fit more so than skill set? I mean, Kyle Shanahan is an offensive genius, so you give him Nick Mullins, and he's gonna turn him into a 5,000-yard passer. So he can probably do that with Trey Lance. But I think you're right. I think they traded away a significant portion of their future. I mean, two future first rounders, including, and also this one, and a third rounder is a haul to move up 9 spots. So they must be confident in what they're doing. And I think if he is their franchise guy, then it's worth it. But if he's not, then it's quite a gamble. How excited are you about the Niners right now?
I mean, I'm very excited. Always very excited, of course. There are a couple rough years in the last 5, let's say, year 5, year 4, counting down now. But the machine that they've put together is just a stout defense with a good O-line, if not above average O-line, that really has been maligned by the number of injuries they've really had to deal with over the last couple seasons, and even then, the depth that they had managed to hold up when they needed it to. Just what was missing was, well, first of all, an easier schedule most of the time, because that is a dogfight of a division. But like I said, the defensive pieces are all in place. For now, the financials make sense. The offense is versatile. It's quick. And I mean, who knows? Barring the injury, Garoppolo's first full year, you don't know what they would have accomplished that year even. But losing the man at the helm and losing, a couple guys, specifically running backs, which that as soon as you lose them, they don't really have anything else. Kittle hadn't really emerged. Now you've got Ayuk, you've got Debo, Kittle. Roswell is a great blocking tight end, and they seem to have just added a few more pieces to really increase their depth. Maybe make another run.
Yeah, you can't help but be excited. I guess. So, just mentioning Jimmy Garoppolo, what do you think happens with him now? Now that Trey Lance is there, I mean, I understand that Trey Lance is a bit of a project. He's got inexperience. You want him, a lot of people have said that he would need to learn behind someone for a year before actually getting the starting job. But to me, I just think it would be insane to trade that amount of capital to move up for a guy and then not start him. Like, to take a quarterback number 3 overall, trade 3 first-round picks and a third, and then not start him. I mean, do you think that there's a chance that Jimmy G starts in front of him, Trey Lance learns behind him for a year, and then takes over after that? Or do you think that there's a chance that they move Jimmy? I don't know. What do you think they do with him?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, because that was what really made everyone scratch their heads when they first of all moved up from 12 to 3, and also what they gave up. But I wouldn't be surprised if they had Lance sit behind Garoppolo. Going back to the character element I was talking about, I think that they all have a very good relationship with each other, and that Garoppolo will tutor him. And as they move forward, you can start with Garoppolo, and if it's not working out, you can toss Lance in. I mean, you're going to have to get something.
Give him the old Alex Smith treatment.
Give him the old Alex Smith treatment, which was actually something I was going to bring up, which is this seems very oddly similar to
like
successful
Alex
campaigns. It's Alex Smithy with Kaepernick behind him, but without moving up for that reason. But it was very clear what was happening. So you went from having certainly a guy who's more mobile than Garoppolo being replaced by a guy who's incredibly more mobile than either him or Smith. And really just more of a change in mindset to maybe try to stop winning games by 1 point by just slowly chugging it down the field with your defense to stop everyone. Maybe making it a little bit more flashy, a little more exciting, and saying if that would actually put them over the hump, because they were so close for such a long time. And they only got to the Super Bowl with combined efforts from the two of them. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but it's definitely eerily similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean, you were definitely always a lot closer to that situation than I was. And I think it was 2012 when Smith went down and Kaepernick took over. I had no idea who Colin Kaepernick was. I was really only paying attention to his fantasy stock, but he really came out of left field. I would be surprised because you get these guys on a 4-year deal, like a rookie 4-year deal, and then because he's a first rounder, there's a 5th-year option. But let's say you stick with the 4 years, the standard, to waste a year of that just on the bench when you've invested so much into the guy, I think is kind of a tough call. But if not, you got to find something to do with Jimmy. So I'm looking at his contract details right now. He's still owed about Oh, never mind. So he's only owed $3 million. I think they could still get out of this right now. He's set to make 27 million this year, and he's only guaranteed another 3. I think they could cut him and be done with this, or potentially trade him. But you look at the league now, and there really isn't a team without a quarterback anymore. Maybe Denver, who didn't make a move for Justin Fields at 9. They're sticking with Drew Lock. So maybe they move him to Denver. I think he actually would be a pretty good fit in Denver. I just don't know if anyone's going to want to pick up that $27 million price tag for Jimmy G. Either way, I love Trey Lance to the Niners. I think he's going to make you guys a much better team. What I have no problem with the pick. I think the pick was great, but the way that it happened was just so strange. Like, the whole that first off, moving up before everyone else did. I get it. You don't want to risk someone else moving up to that number 3 spot. If you see a guy, you love him, do your thing. But not only doing that, but then like the whole game between, like, is it Jones or is it Lance? It could be Fields. Kyle Shanahan went and hung out with Fields for a week, and everyone was thinking that it was going to be Fields, which made sense. And then they come out after the draft and with a little bit of arrogance, I think, kind of smugly, I thought, announced that they weren't telling anyone. They knew the whole time it was going to be Trey Lance, and they didn't tell anyone, not even their coaching staff. I just thought that was so strange because Fields, Lance, and Jones are very different players to me. And I would think if I'm running an organization, I'm going to want to let my coaches know, maybe a little bit of heads up, what I'm going to do before I make a huge move like that. But I don't know. What did you think of all that? Did you see the reasoning behind not telling anyone, like, behind the whole Mac Jones smokescreen? I didn't really get it.
I think that Mac Jones, so smokescreen, that aspect of it was very strange to anyone familiar with his scheme or with that organization. I mean, it wouldn't really make sense to me for them to go from a statue in the pocket to a statue in the pocket that is unproven. For
The
all
same
those
play,
picks,
essentially.
it's the same guy, but they just gave up a bunch of picks. So I never really believed that they were going to do it. As far as not letting their coaches know, I think that's maybe the real smokescreen, was them saying that they didn't let their coaches know, like kind of the snub that you're saying, where, maybe in a
I see.
In a draft that follows, everyone will be like, well, they're extremely unpredictable. We have no idea what they're doing. Even their own coaches don't know what they're doing. But I think that Lance was probably the guy on their radar that they wanted the most, but they also were probably testing the players themselves to see if they would react. And that's why I think the character aspect kind of came into it a little bit. There's so many moving things with this, and Lynch and Shanahan have basically been just attached at the hip since they first arrived in San Francisco, respectively. And I mean, you can't say that they haven't done a good job, that their options drafting. I mean, Nick Bosa was kind of a no-brainer. You sort of knew that was going to happen. That wasn't
right.
That wasn't
Can't
really
miss.
can't miss. And then with, say, for instance, Brandon Ayuk, that one made sense. There wasn't really a whole lot of a shroud around that. That was clearly a need that they had. But I think that their draft, regardless of who they were picking first, they were going to go in a direction that suits Shanahan's sensibilities and John Lynch's financials at the same time. And I think that they actually had a really good draft. But it once again remains to be seen that the amount that they gave up to move up to number 3 is pretty astronomical when you think about really the quality of the potential quality of what you might have, but also the evidence that you have that he can do it.
Right. I mean, I think it always sounds like a lot. And even so, I think it right when the news came out, I had texted you 4 seconds later to see what you thought about it, because it was essentially the RG3 deal. I think the Redskins at that time had moved up from 6 to 2 to get RG3. They had traded 3 first-round picks and I think a couple second rounders or something. But it was the same thing. But I think about it now, and the way that RG3 played for those first 8 games of the season in 2012, if we had gotten that RG3 for the next 10 years, I would do that deal 100 times out of 100. It's totally worth it. If you can get a guy that changes the game that much, and RG3 was electric. I mean, he was unbelievable for the Redskins in 2012. So if Lance can be that kind of thing, if he can give that kind of value and for a longer time, then I think it's totally worth it. The only other thing that kind of puzzled me about their draft was drafting 2 running backs. I didn't really get that. They drafted Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon. That's right. So Trey Sermon in the 3rd round, Elijah Mitchell in the 6th. They already have Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, who both at separate times last year looked fantastic. If it were me, in a video game, you have Jeff Wilson as your first and second down back, Raheem Mostert as kind of the wild card for the 3rd round or for the 3rd down, and then mixed in elsewhere. And then they signed Wayne Gallman, who had a banner year for the Giants. So you got 3 guys. So that running back room is stacked. And then you go into the draft and you take 2 more running backs. I didn't really understand that. You also have Deebo Samuel, who can run routes. I wouldn't be surprised if Kittle gets 10 carries this year, because you just want to get the ball in that guy's hands. And then you just drafted Trey Lance, whose greatest strength is his running ability. So now you've got 8 people that can run the ball. They're not carrying 5 running backs into the season, but I don't know. I just didn't really understand that drafting 2 more running backs. I think they could have used another wide receiver. Right now, it's pretty much just Deebo, Ayuk, and Richie James. I don't know. Do you see any rhyme to this, or any rhyme or reason? I mean,
honestly, I don't, especially considering, again,
so we're on the
that
same page.
the Niners have also not only a fullback, but the highest paid fullback in the league, Kyle Juszczyk, who they use extensively. I mean, he's a great blocker and he has great hands, but he's listed as a fullback, but essentially he's the same as the other running backs that they have, where it's just a guy who can either block really well with great hands or who can run fast with great hands. They had elusive runners. I think that Tevin Coleman was a guy who Shanahan really wanted him to succeed in that locker room, but his injuries really didn't help him, and they couldn't afford to carry the money. But of the 2 running backs, I mean, I don't think that Elijah Mitchell is he's very likely not to have a big presence on the team. He's kind of a bruiser who lacks elusiveness, and his sight isn't really that good, and he's not really a pass catching running back. But I think that Trey Sermon, if I were to say anything, they have a plan to probably get rid of either Mostert or Jeff Wilson. They're going to play with money, and they're going to use Sermon as actually their number 2. They're probably going to use him to develop along with, I believe so, having him develop along with Trey Lance. From all the highlights I saw of him in college, like he he's obviously quite talented, but he's probably a little bit of a work in progress. And Kyle Shanahan loves nothing more than a running back who's a work in progress that he doesn't have to pay a lot. So
Right.
it'll be interesting to see.
Cue Alfred Morris graphic right here.
Exactly.
Alfred Morris shine. All right, let's see. So yeah, I think they did great. I think they did great overall. The Mac Jones smokescreen was kind of interesting to me, but like you said, could be a smokescreen of a smokescreen. You know,
Yeah.
Could be they're playing the long con, as you maybe indicated. Let's see, they got it. So they got a guard, Aaron Banks. That's pretty much all they needed on their offensive line. Ambry Thomas at corner in the 3rd round. I think that was a great pick. Jalen Moore. You can always use offensive tackle depth. Talanoa Hufanga, a safety out of USC, could really be great. If he's able to stay on the field. So I think overall, I think they had a great draft. I don't really see a whole lot of holes in this team right now. I mean, if there's anything working against them, I guess it's maybe that, like we said, potential future draft picks, and then just lack of experience from Lance. The fact that he didn't really play at all this past year, and he's really just had like one great year. But when he was great, he was really great. So I think if they're able to make that work, then I don't see how the Niners aren't at the top of the NFC West again next year. Would you agree?
I mean, I would love to agree, but the NFC West has just a way of. I was actually looking back. They've had so many Super Bowl appearances, just in like a 12 to 14 year span for one division.
Yeah.
And you look at them, and
outside Rams, Seahawks, Niners,
like the Cardinals. If you look, I mean, the Cardinals. It was a while ago. I think it was 2008. I want to say they were in the Super Bowl. That was when they had Anquan Bolden and Fitzgerald and the whole squad. And then you look even as recently as I believe it was the 2015-16 season. I mean, they were electric. They were one of the most incredible teams to watch on the field. And they were only one step away. They were beaten by the Panthers before the Panthers lost in the Super Bowl to the Broncos. But they were 14-2,
right.
and the Panthers were 15-1. So with
the
NFC West, you never
Cardinals
know.
have always been solid. Yeah, and they had a good run there where their defense was, their defense was stout, their offense was electrifying. I think that they could have done a little bit more in this draft. I wasn't super impressed with the Cardinals draft. Cardinals got Zaven Collins, which also was a downer for me. They got him 1st round. I think that Zaven Collins would have been a great fit in Washington. But Washington, of course, ended up with Jamin Davis. But they ended up getting Rondell Moore, Marco Wilson, who they traded up for, Victor Dimukeji, Tay Gowan, James Wiggins, and Michael Mene. So they had certain needs, and they checked a lot of those boxes. Like they checked so cornerback, of course, was a huge need. They checked that box. Linebacker was a need. Checked that box. Rondell Moore at wide receiver I could say that was a need. You're not going to have. So D-Hop can't do the whole thing by himself. Christian Kirk, I think only has a year left. But it just felt like the order that they did things in was kind of strange. Like if corner was a huge need for them, and they took a corner, but they took him in the 3rd round, and they took Marco Wilson, and they also traded up to get Marco Wilson. Whereas they had the 16th pick, they could have just gotten a corner there, somebody who really could have made an impact. I know that Greg Newsome was still available. I don't remember who else was still available. I'd have to look back. But it seemed like kind of a reach. I think I don't see the Cardinals getting much better. They're going to need Kyler Murray to really play his tail off. to repeat, anything that they did last year. But I think that the Cardinals really, in my eyes, are the only team that you can rule out this year from winning the NFC West.
I'd have to agree that, especially because, like you said, they checked off a lot of boxes, but they did them in a very strange way. Like they didn't correspond to their most pressing needs.
Like the most dire needs, right?
Yeah, like so you need, let's say, cornerback right now, and you just decide to pick something else. I mean, why?
Take him in the third, right? Right.
But
just get a corner in the first round.
They didn't do much to address their O-line problems or their depth at all there. And I would say that next year, you could ask for Kyler Murray to take a big step forward, but he's going to be under siege pretty much every game. He only has so much time to.
And he already got hurt, right?
And he already got hurt, and he's not.
And last year,
guy.
this
and
happened.
Also
he was lighting the world on fire, hurt his shoulder, and then he wasn't the same. Yeah.
Right. But I think that the Cardinals have had, because they had such an aging defense for such a long time, they sort of dug themselves into a hole, and then they've filled some of the holes that they had in their defense, but at the cost of maybe not upgrading their offense in ways that would be more sustainable. So, say for instance, I'm not 100% sure who their starting running back is, but I saw at one point Chase Edmonds was listed as their RB1, which was very confusing to me.
They just signed someone?
They're definitely going to need a bigger guy than that to fill that role, because looking at Chase Edmonds and Kyler Murray.
Oh, they signed James Conner. That's right.
James Conner, right? So another.
Yeah, they just signed James.
He's very similar to Kenyon Drake in the fact that he has a lot of potential, but he's also injury prone too. And he's not exactly the best. He's not the best pass blocker in the world. So
right.
I think offensively, what's on Kyler Murray's shoulders moving forward is it's pretty amazing. Like if you really want to expect him to do much.
Yeah.
Moving on from
I was not
them,
impressed.
Though, I mean, they did what they could, but their run in the aforementioned season in, like I said, I think it was 15 or 16. The way they built that team kind of hindered them for years to come. And Kyler Murray was he's performed extremely well for someone not only of his size, but really of the, he only had Hopkins last year. And before that, he really didn't have much to throw to. Like, you can always say Larry Fitzgerald, but I think that guy's like 49 years old now, so he's not Superman for you anymore. But it's interesting to see, because I think that he's one of, if not, in my eyes, like the best blocking wide receiver I've ever seen, and just puts up 100 catches like it's nothing every single year. I think he's like number 2 in yards now or something all time. Like, he's okay, but
he's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's actually great, but they don't have the weapons offensively or defensively anymore to compete in a division that's that competitive. If they were in a different division, they would be probably a number 2 team without really thinking about it too much. But and that
NFC East, maybe
NFC East, if they could win like 7 games a year, they'd have a run at the playoffs.
Apparently, that's all it takes. You just have to go 500. That's all you need. It's really not that hard, and you get to play the Cowboys and Eagles twice a year. Yeah, it's been. I wasn't crazy about the draft for the Cardinals. I don't think they did horribly. But I do think there is one team in this division that did absolutely horribly in their draft, and that has to be the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know what they were thinking throughout all of this. I had heard someone talk about the Tutu Atwell pick, and they were like, "This is my only theory for this." Their general manager got COVID right before this. He's in a hotel room, and they call him. They call him when the second round pick comes up. And they say like, "Hey man, like, are you okay? Are you going to be able to make it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm doing a little bit better, but I'm not doing that well." And they were like, "What? Tutu Atwell? Okay." And they drafted Tutu Atwell second round.
Yeah.
That Tutu Atwell pick makes zero sense at all. Like, I've looked at it a few different ways and I cannot make any sense of it. They already have Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Van Jefferson, who looked great last year. I know they lost Josh Reynolds, but they just signed Deshaun Jackson. They have a genuine need on the offensive line. And you're going to want that offensive line to protect the new quarterback that you just traded for and traded an F ton for. And instead, with your second round pick, first pick you have in the draft, you go a 149-pound receiver from Louisville who has no place on this team. I don't understand what they're going to do with Tutu Atwell. Maybe they have him return punts, but that's not a second round value punt returner. It just doesn't make any sense. Like I said, they already signed Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson even is probably 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier than Tutu. And he's going to play that, small receiver stretching the field, that speed guy. I just don't see where they're doing it. They drafted Ernest Jones in the third round. I've been reading a lot about the draft. I had no idea who Ernest Jones was. I didn't even know who he was. Linebacker out of South Carolina. Maybe they know something I don't, but they ended up with a lot of picks. They had 3 sevenths, 3 fourths, a fifth, a third, and a second. They had 10 picks, and I don't think that they improved their team much. And I'm not a Rams hater. I lived in LA for about 7 years. I followed the Rams. I loved the Rams. I thought that the Matt Stafford pick, the Matt Stafford trade would work out for them. Huge fan of Sean McVay, not only for what he's been able to do with the Rams, but also his time in Washington. So I love the Rams, but I just don't know what they're doing here. Can you help me out, John?
I mean, aside from probably the earliest tanking job I've ever seen in a season for someone that I can't believe that they would start now, but
you trade 3 first rounders
so they
for your franchise quarterback so you can tank.
Yeah, so you can blow 10 picks that you had in the first 5 rounds or whatever. And then at the same time looking, I think it was what I'm reading it here. Receiver, linebacker, defensive tackle, cornerback, tight end, defensive end, running back, wide receiver, linebacker. Not one offensive line player. Not one.
Yeah.
So
that's correct.
So a hole that you already needed to fill.
I don't know.
Like they added a bunch of in addition to a bunch of linebackers, they added a bunch of position players. When they're off, the skill players on their offense
skill players.
The skill players on their offense
really
they're not bad. They're actually really good, but it's not going to matter.
So I would,
if Matt Stafford, who's significantly older than Jared Goff, and Jared Goff was getting pounded last year. If you're just so you have a speedy wide receiver, what's he going to do? Like he's going to take the top off the offense and look back and see Matt Stafford on the ground every single play. Like
he's going to have to play that the Tavon Austin role. Like he's going to
gadget player.
So the only thing I can think, he's going to be a gadget guy. He's not. I don't see how he can line up on the line of scrimmage because he's going to get blown up on the line. He's going to have to play in a lot of motion, a lot of sweeps, and then play on special teams. He's going to have to be like that Tavon Austin type guy. But I just don't see how you use a second round pick on that. It just doesn't. It doesn't.
I mean,
Make sense.
what did you say? It was 5'8", 149 pounds. It's like, so you use a second round pick on an eighth grader, like running in the slot? Like, is that like, what do you, I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
don't get me wrong. I'm
I
happy
think
that they did.
that's roughly the size of Jeremy's son, Jeremiah, who I think just started second grade. Yeah, I just don't. I don't know what they were doing there. Could have been worse. Despite their 10 draft picks, I think Seattle might have actually had a better draft than the Rams did. Seattle only had 3 picks. They got Dwayne Eskridge, Trey Brown, cornerback out of Oklahoma, Stone Forsythe. I like Stone Forsythe a lot. I thought that the Dwayne Eskridge pick was a little interesting, just given that they already have DK and they already have Lockett, and they really needed a cornerback. I'd have to look back and see what cornerbacks were available in the second round. But they did get Trey Brown with their next pick, cornerback out of Oklahoma. I think that he could do well there, but to me, he just didn't really fit the Seahawk mold. He's only 5'10". He's like 5'10", 180. And they really like to go for those guys like the Trey Flowers and the Richard Shermans, who are like 6'3", 210, these giant height, weight, speed guys. I thought it was strange that they got Trey Brown so Dennis and I had talked about this before. I thought for sure they were going to be taking Ifatu Melifonwu, who was he was still available. He ended up being taken in the third round by the Lions, but I thought he was a perfect fit because he just has that Richard Sherman kind of feel to him. So I was pretty shocked that they took a wide receiver when like I said, they still have Lockett, they still have DK, probably like the best wide receiver duo in the league, arguably. I didn't really see what was going on from them. It would have been great for them to trade back, but that's easier said than done, I'm sure. Not a whole lot to look at here, but I don't know. Any thoughts on the Seahawks?
Yeah, I can't really find too much wrong with what they did. Eskridge being a pick that maybe you didn't really need so much just because the other two have been clearly so dominant in really a role that fits them to the Seahawks. Like, you've got both of them are incredibly fast. They both have good hands. They seem to have a great rapport with Russell Wilson. And I think that maybe a receiver at that point they saw it as being their best option, but I would have if I was them, I would have tried to shore up the defense a little bit more. Either lean heavy O-line or like all defense is probably what I would have done. I don't think they really needed another weapon.
Yeah,
but
I think it goes back to what we were talking about with the Cardinals. Like you're checking the boxes, right? But I just feel like prioritizing was kind of an issue. Like there are premium positions, right? So like you're gonna, if you need, let's say you need a wide receiver, a cornerback, a tackle, and a linebacker. You're not going to take the linebacker, then a wide receiver, then a corner, then a tackle. You're going to take a tackle, a corner. Like, tackles and cornerbacks are always going to make bigger impacts on the game. And I think a corner, especially for them with what they have left, I think they still have Trey, but they lost Shaquille Griffin. He went to Jacksonville, and they don't have much in their secondary right now. When they were always a team that was known for their secondary, and that's kind of what makes teams effective, is having a great O-line or having a great secondary, or a great pass rush. That's usually, that really vaults you up. Of course, it's, you need a well-rounded team, but taking a wide receiver before a corner, I'm kind of with you. I just think it was like a failure in priority.
Well, especially with with Russell Wilson's pretty well documented. Finally, I'm surprised it took such a long time, but well documented disapproval of how how much protection he has or how much time he has to throw. And he's a great improvisationalist. But if you're trying to hold on to a guy that's done that much for your organization and really, especially the first 5 or 6 weeks of last year, he was showing you that he can do that. I mean, he's chucking like 4 or 5 touchdowns a game for almost a month.
Yeah.
Like he can still do it for you, but the toll will hit, he's not invincible. Like the toll will eventually be taken. And you saw it as the Seahawks went down the stretch. They were still winning games, but his play was definitely different going down because I think he's getting older now, and he has been, if not in the top 5 almost every year as far as getting hit. And then you decide not to help him out, and you decide to go get, like you said, a cornerback that isn't lanky and 6'3" and kind of a ball hawk and the type of guy that can really turn the tide for you. You just got a guy that sort of filled the shoes of someone else. So I think that they had
Right.
a decent draft. I mean, there's not a huge sample size because they didn't really have a whole lot of options, but
No,
for what
didn't.
they had,
I think they had a good draft.
It wasn't.
And they still have Akella Witherspoon. They still have DJ Reed. They have guys that could turn into something. But just when you see the numbers from last year and like the amount of points and yards that people were putting up on them, it's kind of tough to not go all in on the defense and the O-line.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you're right. All right. Well, you got anything else?
No, that's it. Actually, super excited to see how Trey Lance turns out. I know it's going to be years down the road, but I will eat my shoe if Mac Jones ends up becoming like the next future Hall of Famer in New England.
If he's better than Trey?
Not just that, if he's actually even more than a starting quarterback, sorry, for maybe a year or two. I was never sold on him at all. So I think the smokescreen was kind of funny, but
I think in New England he could produce. Tom Brady was, well, I don't want to use the Tom Brady argument, but I think that Belichick and the team over there could probably make something out of him. But I think it's going to be one of those things where it's more scheme than anything else. We were talking about earlier how Kyle Shanahan can make Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard look good. I think that the Patriots could probably make Mac Jones look good. You think Mac Jones starts, or is that still Cam's team?
I think it's Cam's team until he basically breaks down. I mean, his arm strength last year just.
So what, like 3-4 games?
Yeah, and I mean, the accuracy was all over the place. I don't know. He had it. He was Cam. He had like incredible rushes at points where you're just like, wow, man, I just can't pull him down. But then that's not sustainable. So I think that if I were to make a wager, I'd say week 8.
Okay. So you think halfway through the season, Mac Jones takes over in New England?
I'd say so, yeah.
I like that. That's turning into a tough division, man. You have the Dolphins, who just look stronger and stronger. I mean, it's all kind of based on Tua, but that defense is pretty stout last year. They have a ton of future assets. You have the Jets, who maybe Zach Wilson turns into something, and then you have the Patriots, who ended up with Mac Jones, and then of course you have the Bills. Who are the Bills?
Or the Bills.
I mean, Josh Allen and that whole group. It's just tough to find a hole in that. That went from being like a joke of a division where the Patriots were just running the table every year, to being, I think, like possibly one of the tougher ones. So we'll see.